AEW Rampage might be getting cancelled very soon. After decreasing viewership and importance over the years, it looks like AEW Rampage is being taken off the air in place for a new AEW show. So today I thought to look back on the 3 years that AEW Rampage existed for as a show and talk about where the downfall happened and why it fell off. Also going to be looking back at both the best and worst rated episodes of Rampage, so that's going to be fun. Like and subscribe, and let's talk about the death and downfall of AEW Rampage. In May of 2021, AEW's second TV show, AEW Rampage, was revealed and announced to the world, as it was announced that AEW Rampage would be airing every Friday on TNT on the late night time slot or 10 PM Eastern, immediately following WWE SmackDown. And with that, the first few episodes of AEW Rampage were loaded. The debut episode took place on August 13th, 2021, and in the main event featured Christian Cage defeating Kenny Omega for the Impact World title, in my opinion, one of the best AEW matches to date. And the second episode, titled The First Dance, took place from Chicago, and this was the episode of Rampage that of course featured CM Punk's return to wrestling and debut for AEW, perhaps the biggest moment in AEW history, and both these episodes drew over 1 million viewers, which for a late night wrestling show was very impressive. The show would continue on and was being treated as a show on par with Dynamite, which Rampage was being sold as before it came to air. On October 15, 2021, WWE would air a special supersized SmackDown episode, which would have an extra 30 minutes of runtime, which was going head to head with Rampage. AEW then stacked up their Rampage show with a CM Punk match and a 0 hour featuring Bryan Danielson versus Minoru Suzuki, and the 30-minute block head-to-head also featured The Bunny versus Ruby Soho, and in that 30-minute block, SmackDown would of course beat AEW in the overall ratings. However, Rampage had a higher rating in the key demo, which Tony Khan of course did a victory lap for and started proclaiming victory, with AEW fans acknowledging The Bunny as their tribal chief. AEW Rampage would continue on and was just fine, but the ratings were steadily dropping and nowhere near the million plus it was once at, as in 2022 Rampage kinda grew stagnant, and throughout 2023 up until now, the show has kinda had an identity crisis, not knowing what kind of show it should be. At the start it was a show equivalent to Dynamite, then it became a B show, then it became AEW Dark 2.0, and now it's kind of a mix of all three. Of course, during this time, Collision was announced as a new AEW show airing on TNT, and this took Rampage's place as the second biggest AEW show and rendered Rampage unimportant. And that leads us to now, where AEW Rampage is on the verge of cancellation, as AEW's next media rights deal looks to have Rampage replaced by AEW Shockwave, which looks to be a new 1-hour wrestling show to air on FS1, thus putting an end to Rampage after just 3 years. So hey, how about we look back on those 3 years and look back at the highs and lows of AEW Rampage, because I watched back both the highest rated and lowest rated AEW Rampage episodes according to Cage Match to see how Rampage truly fell off. So let's start off with the highest rated episode, which to no surprise is the August 20th 2021 First Dance edition of Rampage. This show of course opens with CM Punk making his entrance and his first wrestling appearance in like a decade. And this was my first time watching this back in a while, and after all these years, this moment still gives me chills, and I can't believe it happened and everything that transpired after and how quickly it all went. I know it's nothing new to say or hear, but this really happened, and his AEW run just went off the rails so fast. I was in my university room watching this when it happened in literal tears, and 3 years have just flown by and it's all over already. He's not even in the company anymore and is back in WWE. Mad. Anyhow, not much else to say about this. Awesome return, awesome promo, what a crazy and now surreal moment, especially with hindsight. The opening match is Jurassic Express defending their tag titles against Private Party. Oh my effing god, is that Private Party? And this was a good match. It was actually the longest on the show, as these two OG AEW teams had a nice solid match here, with Jurassic Express picking up the win and retaining their belts. As I said though, it was the longest match on the show, as the next match was Jade Cargill versus Kiera Hogan, as Jade Cargill squashes her in about 15 seconds. And now it's time for the main event, as it's Jon Moxley versus Daniel Garcia, and this ought to be a good one. However, quite disappointingly, this match goes under 5 minutes, and this main event is only about 4.5 minutes long. And those 4 minutes, they weren't bad of course, there was some decent action, but it was just so anticlimactic. Mox gets the win, but I imagine this match was cut for time because of how long the CM Punk opening segment went for, but there's nothing that can really be done about that, because Punk's return is obviously going to get as much time as it needs. And this episode of Rampage was built around it, and these are the sacrifices that kind of have to be made. Unfortunately, it was to the detriment of this match between Mox and Garcia. But yeah, overall, I gotta say, this Rampage episode is maybe kind of overrated. The opening segment with Punk is the only great part of the show. The tag match was pretty good, but the Jade match was a squash, and the main event kind of forgettable in the end. Yeah bro, this episode is super overrated. Man, if I think the best rated show is average, what on earth is the lowest rated show gonna be like? The 28th of October 2022 AEW Rampage is the lowest rated episode, so let's just jump straight into it. Show opens with Jon Moxley facing off against Matt Menard in a world title eliminator match. This match was pretty average, it was okay-ish, maybe a bit too competitive. As much as I do like Menard, Moxley should be running through him and dominating this match. The match was fine technically, but just uneventful, and the crowd did not care for it whatsoever. It was a pretty dull affair overall, as Moxley obviously gets the win. We then see Jade Cargill cutting a promo while she's doing pull-ups, then Keith Lee comes out to face Serpentico and wins in 14 seconds. Brilliant. The Acclaimed come out after and cut a promo on Lee, but backstage Swerve Strickland, that absolute sicko, is holding Daddy Ass hostage, and so the Acclaimed retreat backstage to go and save him. As next up we have Ty Mello versus Madison Rayne, and oh boy, this was bad. And I don't like saying that because I like both Ty and Madison as workers, but unfortunately there was no chemistry here, and I think Madison is just a bit past it. She was good in TNA for a bit, but at this stage of her career, she shouldn't be having competitive 10-minute TV matches. Ty Mello is good, and she definitely wasn't the weak link of this match, but she's not able to carry Madison to a good match. It was just a dull match once again, but to be fair, dull doesn't even describe it. The last match was dull. This match was just lifeless. And once again, the crowd were dead silent for this one too. It's a really dead crowd for this entire show tonight. Anyway, now it's time for the main event though, as it's Wardlow defending the TNT title against Matt Taven. And it's crazy how this show went from Kenny Omega versus Christian Cage main events to this. And if you know anything about me, you'll know that I do not care for either Wardlow or the Kingdom, so yeah, this match is not for me, and it's a real punch in the gut for me. I feel like this is a rib. It was fine, average, and really just the same criticisms as the other matches, just an uneventful, dull match that didn't really need to happen, especially not in the main event, and the crowd were completely dead for it once again. And that wraps up the lowest rated AEW Rampage, and I gotta say, I understand the rating. That was a drag of an hour. AEW Rampage at the start of its lifespan was a really fun show, and my favourite wrestling show on TV. 1 hour wrestling shows, when done right and paced right, are a blast, and early Rampage episodes had great wrestling, big stars on the show, and it felt like an important show that was on level with AEW Dynamite. But as time went on, it just became pointless matches and became a B show, and then a C tier show, and AEW Rampage ending now is probably the right time to do it, and I'm interested to see what they do with Shockwave, which I'm really hoping isn't just a Rampage 2.0 and actually has a different presentation and style to it. But that all remains to be seen, so as of right now, it's not cancelled yet obviously, but we can say rest in peace to AEW Rampage 2021 to 2024. That's it from me though. Make sure to like the video and subscribe with notifications on for more pro wrestling content on the Top 10 Wrestling channel. I have been Tom.
And editor Greg.
And I'll see you all in the next video.